Okay, hello everyone. So this evening we're talking about interoperability, and in industry today, a lot of people have said that the idea of one blockchain to rule them all isn't feasible, and for a healthy blockchain ecosystem, a lot of blockchains need to collaborate together. I'd like to kind of open this up by saying maybe that isn't true. Maybe we do need one blockchain that has everything, and that's the way things should be. And um, I'd like to kind of hear from, maybe we can start off with you, Francois, and say, why do you think that's a fairly silly thing to say? Why do you think that's not a correct assertion? What are your views on that?
My view is that if there was only one currency that was something and every other currencies were zero, then we would have just the US dollar worth everything and everything else was zero. The reason cryptocurrencies exist at all is that there is a small but positive non-zero chance that they may take over the world. That's why Bitcoin is valued. That's why other cryptocurrencies are valued. So even if one gets most the lion's share of whatever, there will be other currencies just in case the first fails, because there is value in having a safeguard or a plan B. There is a value in a plan B that is superior to zero, and therefore the price will be superior to zero, and therefore there will always be other currencies.
I mean, okay, well that's interesting. I mean, do you think that the reason that there's multiple cryptocurrencies, Tom, is a valid reason for why interoperability is important in blockchains? What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of have a different analogy. It's kind of like a baseball team, and
Yeah.
like I'm kind of the manager. And so you got lots of players, they have different skills, some come and go, but like we're all on team crypto, and the opponent is like the current way of doing things. It's centralized Web 2 and 0.1% APY and no self-sovereign identity. And so you've got all these different players with different strengths. You've got several starting pitchers. But the one thing you don't do is you don't root for other players on your team to screw up. And you don't want to have clones of the exact same player on your team. That diversity, is a good thing. And you work together to beat the opponent. So a little different than the currency example, but that's kind of the way I see it. Although I can't play baseball, so I don't know where that came from.
I'm sure you've got many, many skills, Tom. I mean, I look at like a lot of the big systems that are deployed in large organizations, and they pick like large monolithic platforms from say IBM or various other companies, and those things works quite well. Um, wouldn't that be a rationale for, one big system is better than lots of many interconnected systems? Why would you say, what's the argument for interoperability and lots of systems working together to achieve an outcome in terms of blockchain? Why would you say that's better? What are your thoughts on that?
Is that back to me? I mean, that's a
Ah,
classic
or Francois.
decentralization thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's the question. Yeah, and then you're the guy with the skills. So why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear for all of us that have drank the Kool-Aid that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, you
Hmm.
can see recently that AWS has gone down, taken things down, and everything goes down. And so
Yeah.
that is sort of the that's the main point there. You don't, like you said, it works for a while, right
Yeah.
up until you bring on a new whatever it is that tries to onboard or attach to that centralized thing, and then they've got to tweak it and try to fix it, and that breaks something else, and it's just the wrong way to go about it. It's Web 2, and it's done. It's done for.
Okay. I mean, so like,
Uh,
fault tolerance is an important thing. Uh, I agree with you, and I think interoperability does offer that advantage compared to a centralized system. But what about functionality? I mean, in an interoperable blockchain ecosystem, maybe Francois, you can talk maybe about that. Why is
yes.
that? Where are the advantages there? I mean, from a practical point of view, what advantages does interoperability give you in terms of functionality? Francois?
Yes. So I want to say that the fault tolerance is not just a technical argument. It's also a governance argument. It's also an evolution argument, because even if one system is, say, clearly better than the other today, let's assume, doesn't mean that it will stay the best tomorrow. That does not mean that it will completely fall apart. If you say that the US will never have a bad president, well, I think every single American agrees that one of the last two elected presidents is awful. So of course, things can go wrong. Even a great country can fall. Even a great cryptocurrency can fall. And it's not just a technical argument. Oh, the servers fall. No, it's just like, oh, they fail to evolve with the times when the times requires evolution. It can be that some scammer becomes the head of the thing and grind it to the halt or make very bad decisions. So interoperability is about being able to survive these catastrophic events. It means that whatever happens, you are not siloed, and then if they have most of the cryptocurrency and everyone is there, then everything is lost. But it allows people to balance and to have a much more robust, resilient system by being able to move easily and to adapt and to adopt. Oh, these guys had a great innovation. Let's innovate. And let's say that Bitcoin is the leader, but they consistently fail to adopt the new innovations. Well, eventually you will want to go somewhere else. Or maybe Cardano today is missing something but gets it tomorrow, or has something today and fails to innovate tomorrow. And we don't have to be tied to them. And because there are this interoperability network, you can find the good things where they are when they are there. And you can run away from the bad thing where they are when they are there. It means that things are more fluid for everyone, and everyone is safer and better, and you can enjoy the best of what each network has to offer at any moment.
Okay, I mean, let's talk maybe, Tom, a bit about the players in this space and who's actually innovating here. You've got a lot of experience over the years with blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and I know we've spoken about this extensively in the past. But like, who in your experience are the companies, or what are the major projects that are innovating in the whole interoperability space? What was it that kind of pique your interest, so to speak?
So from an interoperability point of view, I mean, there's a lot of projects doing a lot of different things, but just from the interoperability point of view, the Cosmos inter-blockchain communication protocol is very cool. It's kind of like the Polkadot parachains. They're allowing different full chains to connect to each other and talk to each other. The problem with those, though, still is that they're very new. You're sort of like, it's this concept of bridging, and great, you've got a bridge from one asset to another. I mean, that's kind of the first phase of interoperability, but you still need a new wallet, you need a new address, you have to interact with some different protocol, you have to connect to a different network. Like, it's not quite there yet, but I think those guys are going in the right direction. And then the next step forward is something like Ergo and Cardano, where that's going to be a much more tangible example of two separate chains sort of sharing the same space in a more synergistic way, and you'll be able to have frictionless sharing of tokens and NFTs and assets, and they'll be in the same wallet and things like that. So that's, to me, that's going in the right direction. The bridging and all of that, and they say it's interoperability, but it's more like, you can come over to my house and sit in my backyard. Like, great. You're gonna cook me dinner? Like, what else? What else are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think when you mentioned Cosmos there, Tom, I saw Francois shake his head. So maybe, Francois, you've got something about Cosmos, and what's your
Cosmos is my shortstop. He's my shortstop. He's not bad.
I know, but I think this is raised some shackles with Francois. So what's the deal with Cosmos, Francois?
Cosmos is a system I love to hate or hate to love or something. It's I think they got a few things deeply wrong and a lot of things also very right. And I like that they're trying to bridge these blockchains. I think they're not doing it right. I think they are doing it in a way that dilutes the capital in a way that's not very functional and a way that is probably gameable, and I don't trust their design. I think that indeed bridging is an essential part of making blockchains work together. It's not sufficient. And one of the problems with Cosmos and its competitors, Dfinity, who else in the same space, is that they try to, or Polkadot, they're trying to bridge people, basically making a mother of all networks. And it's not so much bridging, but like trying to tentacles to suck on the other networks and make a new network that's the mother of all. And everyone wants to be the same thing, but it's not really making people equal, or it's not really a protocol that allows. It's kind of a one-way, it's one-sided bridge, and you have to trust their network to do the bridge. That's not how I see real interoperability. Real interoperability is based on everyone is equal in a certain way, and it's not about your network being interoperating with the others. It's about having peer-to-peer protocols between these things, or at least peer-to-peer, maybe meta protocols between these many networks. But my approach with Moon is that we don't want to take sides. That's one of the we want to take the sides of everyone who is in goodwill, but we don't want to be a Cardano shop or a Nervos shop or Bitcoin Cash or Polkadot, whatever. We want to be an everyone shop, and we believe that real interoperability is when you can write. It's not when you can connect 10 different systems with 10 different languages. It's when you have one language from which you can, or one wallet from which you can oversee everything. And sure, at some point you need some kind of bridges, and then you want to put them into competition, and you want to have them much better capitalized than what Cosmos does, where every bridge has its own capitalized, very small capitalized validation network. So it kind of defeats the purpose of validation networks, I believe. So there are many things I would change about their design, but the main thing I would change is having design that's not one-sided bridging with very small cap validation networks.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about let's get into the architecture of interoperability and sidechains for a second, and we're lucky to have Nico Akaros here, the CEO of DC Sparks, and Nico, I know you have a lot of experience and knowledge about sidechains and this kind of thing, as well as many other areas. So maybe you can share with everybody here, and for the benefit of the people who are watching the show, a little bit more about sidechains and the technology and what it means and how important that is to interoperability. Could you let us know a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to start with like an analogy first. I think like right now there is a huge focus in the specific blockchains, but I think this is going to change. Why? Because as we know, like, or as actually like what I believe is that we don't need like 20 different blockchains that are going to be layer ones that are going to win. Definitely it's not going to be one winner takes all, because we see this in every single industry, supermarkets, car industry, or even like more of like software with hardware. For example, when you use Netflix.
Maybe Francois, you can, while Nico gets himself sorted out, you can maybe kind of provide a little bit of a primer about sidechains and the technology. Would you kind of do that for the audience?
Discuss sidechains.
Yeah.
I think there are plenty of different options, and what I like to think is we have layer one networks. A network at the end is some kind of validation network that will look at the transaction and make sure that everything is fine. And from a technical point of view, there are plenty of things, but in the end, from an economic point of view, you have to trust the network, and you have to trust 2/3 of the people in the network. And one of the things that make you trust the network is the capitalization of the network. That is, you know that if these people try to cheat, well, the network is worth, say, $4 billion today. Therefore, these people will lose $4 billion worth of money by making their network worthless by cheating all the time. So that's the economic safety of the network. So when you have a layer 2 solution such as sidechains, the sidechain also has its validation network. And if every sidechain has its own validation network, instead of having a 4 billion or 10 billion validation network, they will have a 4 million validation network. And then you should not trust this sidechain for more than 4 million worth of capital or whatever. And if you can have a sidechain that has a lot and a lot of money.
Yeah, that's great. Nico's back again. I think he was a bit of a technical issue there. So Nico, sidechains and the technology. I think you started off with something really interesting there. Can you kind of maybe go back to the start and explain to the audience here why sidechains are and why they're so important for interoperability?
Yeah, so I'm the person of the opinion that I don't think there's going to be 20 blockchains out there that are going to be able to make it, or even one is not going to be a one winner takes all, because it requires not only technology but also requires adoption. And we have seen this in multiple industries. Usually it's like an oligopoly where you have like a few winners. And I think blockchain is going to be the same case. And something similar happened, for example, with computing. We have Amazon, we have Google, we have DigitalOcean. And actually, this is something that at the end for the user, they don't really care. They care more about products. What do I mean by this? For example, when you're watching something with Netflix, you just want to stream a movie. Do you know if Netflix is using Amazon, Google, or DigitalOcean? You don't know, and you don't care, because that's like part of the backbone. So interoperability is really important because the focus is going to be more in products and like more user-facing protocols. And sometimes they're going to have like different teams that are going to be focusing on specific technologies. So maybe some blockchains are going to have a specific trade-off that are better for some specific products. So it's going to be important to have interoperability between like all these blockchains that mostly are going to be the ones that are going to be like part of this oligopoly, the final ones. So maybe there's going to be like 5 or 6, but it's really important to do that. And at least for us, what we are doing is that also, for example, particularly for Cardano, we also going to have developers that know different technologies. For example, you can code right now in Haskell, which is like really good for like to make things properly, to go towards formal verification, and to have something that for something that's going to be like financial is like really robust. But if you are the startup that you want to like create an MVP, or you want to do something faster, or maybe you got developers that know Solidity, we're going to be providing a sidechain that's going to give Cardano capabilities to run EVM. So you're going to be able to use like another set of like skill sets in Cardano as well. Our idea is not to create like a separate blockchain, but actually to empower Cardano to be able to do more. And this is also going to come with like some potential cool interoperability for all the blockchains that we believe that could be part of like this oligopoly. And the idea is to empower Cardano with more capabilities, but also
to jump on top of that,
give interoperability
just a
to
second
these
here.
other
I think
blockchains.
this phrase just jumped into my head when Nico was talking, that interoperability, like one aspect of it is in invisibility. And like Nico said, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Imagine if when you sent an email, you had to go in and change, which ISP you were connecting to and use a different email for. You don't have to do any of that. But when you go to a modern website, you don't care what language it's written in or what ISP or T1 backbone it's using to connect to the internet. That's all invisible. And I think that's where we're heading. 5 years from now, we still hear people saying the word sidechain, like we're probably not evolving in the right way. That should all be invisible.
From should to is, there's a big way to go, though. And one of the problems, or both advantages and problems with cryptocurrency technology, is that the code is law, and which means that there's no recourse. And if one of your sidechains falls because it's undercapitalized and it's get captured by the bad guys, you better not have used it, or you're going to suffer a lot. So you can't make things completely invisible in the sense that you can't eliminate the risk completely. The question is, how do we manage this risk? That's a question. How do you make it as invisible as possible, invisible enough but you can't make it like 100% invisible completely. There is someone somewhere has to say, I'm going to take this risk or not take it, and maybe the risk was worth taking, maybe it was not, and the people who make the bad some people who will make bad choices and will suffer, and
But I guess
how you delegate those choices.
we're talking about the consumer experience, I guess, ultimately, which I think is what you're alluding to, Tom, is that, you know,
Yes.
and the Netflix thing, like, as Nico mentioned, I have no idea about all the things that are happening. Well, I have a slight idea because I'm a nerd. But most people don't have an idea and don't really care. And there are times when I don't want to care about it, I just want the experience. And I think that is definitely the way you want to go, where ultimately it becomes totally transparent. I mean, we talked here, briefly about the concept of the side chain, which is terribly interesting and really cool technology. I know what you mentioned, Nico. But I'd like to also turn to the role of languages in terms of what role do programming languages play when it comes to interoperability? And maybe, Francois, you have some experience and some ideas there.
Yes. Today there are plenty of blockchains and just almost as many programming languages for blockchains as there are blockchains. If you want to write an app, you have a different program on every blockchain, and then a different program for the smart contract and a different program for the client and server code that talks to the smart contract. And you go from one blockchain to the other, you basically can't unless the two blockchains are cloned from each other. That happens. And one of the things I'm working on at Moon is precisely a programming language Glow that allows you to program the same programming language on all the blockchains. And then you will be able to write your app just once, and it will run everywhere, and it will do the smart contract, it will do the client and server code that talk to smart contract. Therefore, you don't have to be a specialist in the blockchain, in any blockchain. You don't have to talk to a blockchain. It's all done for you, and it takes 10 times less code, and it works everywhere. So that's what we're working on, and we believe that's a very important part of making the experience seamless. We want to commoditize the blockchains, basically. All blockchains are mostly equivalent, and if one has a small advantage, it's faster, it's cheaper, or whatever it is, or it has this capability, yes, you will use it, but you will use it by clicking I want this blockchain. You will not use it by completely rewriting your application from scratch and deciding, oh no, I wanted this blockchain, so I need to throw all of my code and restart from scratch. We want to make the experience seamless and commoditize what's underneath. That's important.
Okay.
I can't commoditize the trust. I can't make the trust decision for you. But what I can do is commoditize the code experience. So you can only have to write your code once.
And different programming languages are and programming languages that can work on multiple blockchains are important. But fundamentally, at the base there, you're talking about virtual machines that run these things. So, the most common virtual machine is the EVM. So, Nico, can you kind of explain to the audience about the EVM, why it's so important, and how it works, just to kind of add flavor to the discussion?
Yeah, sure. So the VM stands for Ethereum Virtual
Hmm.
Machine. So Ethereum was like the first like blockchain that gained like wide adoption with like a Turing complete smart contract. What is Turing complete? Basically that you can do basically anything that has loops. Something like a fun fact that Cardano is not Turing complete by transaction, but in one transaction, but it's Turing complete in multiple transactions. And this gives like some really nice features when you have like a state machines, so you can have like some assurance. But coming back to the EVM, this is like what most of like the developers know, and it's like a very nice way to start knowing more about blockchain because, for example, Cardano uses UTXO, which is like a little bit more complex, and it has trade-off. It's more complex, but also you can get like more potential. So at the end, like the web or like the entire internet works with like multiple programming languages, and that's how we have been talking. So giving the possibility to code in any programming language, depending what is your level of skill, is like really important. Maybe you start like MVP with one specific programming language like EAVM, and then you can jump to a little bit more complex one that's going to give you higher assurance. So you're going to be like more secure against hack or some specific like problems that could arise with your economic model. So yeah, you don't need to go to the most complex, difficult thing one. You can start like building. And this is also part of interoperability. Interoperability is not just moving tokens
Mm.
from one chain to the other one, but also interoperability means like interoperability between technologies. For example, for us, it's really important to account-based EVM to be able to interoperate with UTXO, and we are bringing wrap smart contracts that's going to allow for example, a protocol be 80% in Solidity and 20% in Plutus. So maybe if there is like a really important part that needs
Yeah.
to be like formally verified and needs to be like really robust, you can build that in Plutus. And if you have other parts that maybe you want to like MVP or like test, maybe you can do it in Solidity. And there are like some specific projects that have been audited so many times that that are
Yeah.
pretty
Well, I
secure.
mean, EVM
And
is
yeah,
amazing, and I think the
I'm
work that
curious
you and
to know
your
what
company are
the other
doing
things as well.
in this area are really exciting. So it'd be really cool to see what happens in the future. You know, I think, as you've said, the EVM is probably the more dominant virtual machine on the market for running smart contracts. But there are some, up and coming stars, Tom, I guess, and one of
Yeah,
those is Yeli. So you're very, very closely
look at that
associated with that.
segue.
Can you tell us a little
What
bit
a
more about that?
what a segue.
I know
Um,
this is what I do.
uh, yeah, it's under that umbrella that leads back to multiple languages where interoperability is also kind of flexibility. And
Hmm.
in order to get there, runtime verification, and our CEO Grigori Roshu invented something called K. It's the K framework. It's a executable semantic framework that you can define languages and tools. And what we did is working with IOHK, now IOG, we created a virtual machine called Yele Virtual Machine. So it's a K implementation of a virtual machine. And the thing that's different about it is we didn't just write the code, and create this thing. We first wrote out a full specification and formal semantics of the virtual machine, and then we generated it automatically using K. And so that's, something sometimes we say correct by construction, but because it's based on that formal semantics, you can create mathematical proofs. You can do formal verification, like Nico said, etc. And that's sort of the security and technology part. But that Yele VM is an intermediate layer, down to the blockchain. And so those high level programming languages, that contract source code gets compiled down to Yele and runs on the Yele VM, and it's designed to make it very easy to support new languages. So that kind of opens the door to seeing smart contracts in C or C# or Java or JavaScript or whatever you want to do. So that's the flexibility part that then leads to that innovation and why interoperability leads to better features and things like that. That's how you're going to get to see major apps like YouTube or Salesforce or whatever on Web3. We can't quite get there today, but we will be able to. So we have K implementations of a bunch of different VMs, but Yele is something that we did together with IOHK.
So I mean, do you see the fact that like Yeli in the long run, one of the advantages to it is, or the stated goals where it wants to go is the ability to use normal or regular languages to code smart contracts. You see that as a feature that's going to help with the whole area of interoperability, Tom?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one way to look at it is that bridging concept where you've got, whatever it is now, 10 or 12 million developers out there being able to write smart contracts in a language that they're familiar with and not caring about, which VM or what happens after that. Like, the place we want to get to is, it's kind of the analogy of the Netflix thing again today. We don't care what language it was written in. What we care about is that you've got great developers, writing innovative features, etc. But that's the path we're on. That's what Yele is for. We've got multiple languages today. We've got multiple VMs. We've got K-Wasm for Polkadot and Elrond. We've got K-Yele, K-Michelson for Tezos. We've got a K-EVM for Ethereum that is super fast. We have a Teal version for Algorand. Like, we're trying to get as broad as we can, again, and not have all the eggs in one basket. But that's going to lead to multiple language smart contracts.
Very cool. I mean, I think the three of you convinced me. Maybe I started off on the wrong path, but I'm starting to feel more bullish about interoperability now after this discussion. I guess one of the other things about the evolution of technology is there's Charles Hoskinson has called it a Wi-Fi moment, or a Bluetooth moment, where this kind of enabling technology had a big change on things and really altered the world. I mean, I'm old enough to remember modems. Probably Nico, you don't remember those things, but anyway, we won't talk about that. But I remember
14.4, baby.
yeah, and I remember that experience, and then we had this continuous internet, but you still had an Ethernet cable, and all of a sudden you had Wi-Fi, and it changes the whole thing again. So I mean, I guess you guys know where I'm coming from on this. I'm just kind of curious for each of you, in terms of interoperability, what is the kind of the Wi-Fi moment for that in your mind? What's the thing that you think is going to be really have a major impact on interoperability, and then as such the kind of the growth in a very expansive capability for blockchain. I mean, maybe we'll start with you, Francois, first. What do you think that Wi-Fi moment is for interoperability?
Well, I'm very biased. I think the language flows that I'm working on is precisely trying to address the interoperability not at the low level, like Tom and Kay is doing a great job handling all those low-level VMs. But I believe that the difficult part about smart contracts and things like that and dApps is the high-level concept. You want to be able to not think in terms of bits and bytes. You want to be able to think in terms of assets and participants and agreements. And what happens if someone stops cooperating, and the entire adversarial aspect of these interactions. And this is not at all. You can have a perfectly specified low-level machine, which unhappily a lot of people don't, but thanks to K we have, and that still doesn't help you at the high level understand what's going on or failing to go on with this contract. And what I think the important moment is when people can look at a smart contract or interaction or whatever and say, yeah, I understand what's going on. And because it's like 10 lines of something that tells you about assets and participants, and not 1,000 lines of things that tells you bits and bytes and how you encode your packets on the network and sign them with whichever cryptographic protocol. If you have to think at that level, you have lost 99% of the people, and so basically they have to sign a blank check to whoever does the thing, and at this point it's a centralized network, because you have to trust some central authority to trust the thing. But if the language is so much simpler that maybe not everyone can understand, maybe 5% of the population can understand it, that means that you can go to your neighbor and, does this thing mean what I think it means? Yes, it does. Okay, so I can trust it in a somewhat actually decentralized way.
Yeah,
And that's
when
what we aim for with Glow. We want interoperability by having people understand what the smart contracts means at a high level, not at a low level.
Yeah, when I started working many years ago, my first manager told me to learn about the OSI reference model, so I would know about the different layers in the stack and be a good Unix sysadmin. I would say I would struggle to find anybody who would know what that is right now, and it's really good because we've created that layers of abstraction now where we don't have to worry about that anymore, and we can focus on the really important things. So yeah, that's really cool. So Tom, I mean, you've been you've been thinking there for a while. I could see the cogs going in your as you were
Seeing it going
thinking there
around.
too. Yeah, Francois. So, what do you think that Bluetooth or Wi-Fi moment is going to be for interoperability? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with something specific. I think something we're going to see next year, sometime in 2022, is what I'd like to see is like seamless multi-chain liquidity. So imagine you've got a token, token A on chain A and token B on chain B. I should be able to just add those tokens to a liquidity pool and not have to worry about the infrastructure or what network it's on or side chains or bridging or anything like that. I should just be able to do it. And it starts to get into the definition or the term cross-chain. Like, that's not really it. That's setting the bar too low. It has to be much more unified. And while they're at it, I hope they make impermanent loss easy for people to see and understand. It's terrible. Grigori created a great big equation on, formally defining impermanent loss. It's awesome. I still don't understand it. But yeah, multi-chain liquidity is a great example of something that I think is reachable pretty quickly.
All right. So maybe Nico, I know you've been thinking there for a while. So, what do you think that moment is when there's something that's really going to have a big effect and lead to greater interoperability and a better overall consumer experience? What do you think?
Yeah, this is going to sound funny, but I think interoperability is going to be great when no one notices that exists. What do this means? That users are not going to notice that they're using interoperability, and for developers, they are not going to need to understand low-level protocol and how things work, and they're just going to be able to connect an API and not having to have a wallet that supports Plurus, another that supports EVM, another that supports like Rust. So basically, this means that when you have a good UX, that the users don't even understand that they need to move tokens between different blockchains, that the transactions are fast and they don't need to be waiting 7 days or 10 minutes, and it seems like natural. And when transactions are also cheap because they're not going to be paying a high amount to
Super
move.
duper.
And I think
All
this is
right.
going to
Well,
be the
I think
moment
we're
that
kind of at the end.
interoperability is going to be great when no
I
one
think it's been a
notices that
fascinating
they're
discussion
using
about
it.
interoperability. I think it's definitely one of probably the hottest topics in blockchain right now, and you know, ultimately we're going to have to work better together to collaborate and to use the strengths of different networks to achieve a better outcome for our consumers. I think it's a really important message that we need to kind of probably send from this call, that that's ultimately something that needs to happen, and the industry needs to kind of move in that direction, because it's only by working together can we, I think, achieve greater things. So, Nico, thank you. Tom, thank you. Francois, thank you. And looking forward to chatting with you again soon about this. Okay? Thanks, guys.